Hi and welcome to Lecture 3 of Contemporary Thinking in Marketing. Today we're going to be looking at consumer value. Before we get into the main part of the lecture, I just wanted to take a moment to go over the assessment brief just to make sure everyone is still clear on what it is we're trying to achieve in this module in terms of assessment. The assessment contains two interrelated items, the first one being the showcase, which you do as a group, and then the second one is your individual responses to the individual questions 1 and 2, which you can find in the module guide. The idea is that the customer profile that you create in the group showcase then feeds into and can be used in your responses to the individual questions. However, even though there is a group element to this module, you will find that you will end up with one individual mark. So even the showcase will receive an individual mark, and you will not get two separate marks, just one single mark at the end of the module. So the first part then is to, as a group, create a sector-specific consumer profile, and to present this creatively. So for example, we've talked about students in the past have done role plays, they've done quiz shows, they've done like Gogglebox type setups. So really do think about how you can present your ideas creatively. Try and avoid using things like PowerPoint. You then utilise this consumer profile to help you answer the it should say two short answer questions here that you can find in your module guide. So the showcase then. The showcase is a maximum of 15 minutes and your seminar tutor will control this time very carefully. So make sure that your showcase doesn't go over 15 minutes. As we've already said, it needs to be a creative delivery. And it must include all group members. So even if you are doing a video or you're doing a role play, you must make sure that all of the group members present in some way live on the day, and that it doesn't just come down to 2 or 3 people actually presenting on the day. Even if they take part in the video, we're looking for an equal participation from all group members. It has to be sector specific, so either from hospitality or from tourism. So for example, a good example would be a business traveller, or you might want to look at a student going on a gap year. You have to consider all the detailed elements of a consumer profile that we looked at last week. So that would include demographics, things like age, gender, the psychographics, buying behaviours, goals, motives, values, and geographics as well. We've also spent some time last week looking at consumer trends, and you need to talk about in your showcase what consumer trends your particular consumers are affected by. What trends do they follow? Which ones do they ignore? We will be giving you a consumer profiling sheet which will help you to start developing your ideas about your consumer and their profile in next week's seminar. We also want you to try and select a model to enable you to construct your profile. And in the seminars this week, we will be looking specifically at Holbrook's model. And this lecture today will also actually explore this model in more detail. But we'll also introduce you briefly to another couple of models, the Vowles model and Smith and Colgate's model. Now, all the details for those 3 models are available to you on Blackboard, and I've also emailed them out to the hospitality groups. We are looking for you to use data to support your profile and help justify your choices. So for example, if you say that students are particularly interested in drinking or eating out, then you would need to find some evidence to confirm that that's the case. And you might be using things like Mintel reports, Passport, etc. But within the seminars, your seminar tutors can give you guidance on how to find suitable data. With regards to the models that you use, we'll be discussing Holbrook's model in detail, but if you feel more comfortable as a group with one of the other models, that's VALS or Smith and Colgate, please do feel free to use them. We're just wanting you to pick one model and pick the one that you feel easiest to deal with, that you can apply to your consumer profile most effectively. So let's now take a look at the individual question responses. So this year we have reduced the number of responses to just 2 questions with 750 words for each. So the key thing is within those questions it asks you to look at a consumer profile, and the key thing here is please don't reinvent the wheel. Make life easy for yourself and use that consumer profile that you've generated as a group. Try and be really concise with your writing style as well, because you've only got 750 words. As I've explained to some of the seminar groups already, the detail of your consumer profile could be placed as an appendix to your responses. That will help you with the word count. Any supporting data can also be inserted in tables and graphs if you prefer to do that, rather than putting it in the appendices. And remember that any words that are included in tables and graphs are not included in your word count. If you do use appendices, then please refer to them clearly in the main responses. So for example, you might see for further information, see Appendix 1. For question 1, you can pick one of the following marketing concepts. So you could pick branding, promotion, social media or e-marketing, relationship marketing, or sustainable and green marketing. Your responsibilities are to now make a start on these presentations, and particularly in next week's seminars you need to bring the information as a group so that you can actually start working on developing your profiles within the seminar environment, and you'll be able to ask questions in these sessions, and we will be allowing you time to develop your ideas, but being also there to support you and help you to success. Please also make sure that you do all the extra reading. So whilst this lecture can give you a quick introduction to Holbrook, you do actually need to read the article on the model that we've provided for you. And if you want to do VALS or Smith and Colgate, then it would be useful to use one of the others, to read the others. If you feel comfortable with more than one model, then feel free to use a couple of different models within your group showcase. But it is really about recognising that these presentations or showcases will come up very quickly in semester 1, so therefore my advice would be to start sooner rather than later working as a group to start formulating your showcase ideas and your consumer profile. So, what are we going to be doing in today's lecture? Well, the objectives of today's lecture are really to define the concept of value. So we've touched on it already in the first couple of lectures, and we've used the term, but we haven't really stopped and explained what value means. It's a little bit more complex than you might think on face value. So, we're going to explain why a discussion of value is so important for the assessment. So there's a specific link between this lecture and the assessment. And we're also going to be introducing Holbrook's model, which is going to help you classify different types of consumer value and show you how you might be able to apply it to the consumer profiles that you are going to be creating. So, where does value fit into this pathway of segmentation, targeting and positioning? So remember that we looked at this as a 3-step process, that you have to start with segmentation, you have to then move to targeting, and then finally positioning. And what's important to recognise is that value fits in at all three of these separate stages. So let's have a look at how this works. Well, first of all, let's remind ourselves what segmentation is. This is about identifying and describing market segments. So really, this is where we are creating our profile. So if we look at our assessment, we are really focusing in detail on the first stage, which is segmentation. And at this stage, where does value fit in? Well, here it's about understanding what different consumers value, because value is a very personally driven thing. We all value different things for different reasons. The second stage is targeting. So this is where companies actually realise that they can't possibly successfully target all the possible different market segments. So they have to evaluate each segment and actually decide which ones are going to be most profitable to go after and actually target. Okay, and here you have to ask yourself this crucial question. Can you actually, as a business, create the value that that target consumer is seeking? So if you feel you can create value for a particular market segment, then that might be one of the segments that you choose to target. If there's a particular segment of consumers who you feel that your business isn't able to create value for, then that would be one that you would probably discount. Thirdly, we look at positioning, and this is where we actually bring in the marketing mix and we design our products and services and we design our marketing to meet the consumer's needs. So here we would call it creating a value proposition. And what I mean by this is we actually make sure that we now know which consumers we're targeting, we know how those consumers create value or want value creating, and now we have to design our products and services and our marketing mix to actually reach out and meet those consumer needs. So the key thing to remember is that value is so important because it fits in at all the three key stages of marketing, which are segmentation, targeting and positioning. Okay, so here you will be able to see a link to a YouTube clip, and it is important for you to perhaps stop, watch the clip and reflect on the types of consumer value that are being created and catered for in this particular video. So this is an important definition to think about. This slide says that the marketing transaction is an exchange between two parties where each party gives up something of value in return for something of greater value. So this is important. If a customer is going to exchange something, often money or time, into purchasing your products and services, they will expect in return something of greater value. And in a way, as a hospitality or tourism business, we also potentially get something of greater value in return in the same transaction. For example, we might gain consumer loyalty, which is actually potentially more valuable than the individual exchange. And this is really at the foundation of why we've moved from a transactional approach to marketing, where we're just really interested in getting the most money out of each individual transaction and then moving on to a different consumer, to the more modern focus on relationship marketing, where we realise that actually we can get greater value as companies out of customer loyalty. And really the only way we can create loyalty is by understanding this idea of value and trying to view value from the customer's point of view. So you always need to think about, will the customer value this change in service? Will they value this change in price? Will they value this additional product that we're going to be offering? So let's have a look at Holbrook's model of consumer value. It's a very interactive and relativistic model, but don't worry too much about those two phrases. It's based on preference and it's based on experience. So Holbrook did actually create this by looking at a lot of different consumer interactions. So it is based on real life consumers. The principle of the model is that it looks at customer needs, wants and preferences and how they actually underlie people's value perceptions. So basically what it's saying is that value is a result of a complex mix of customers' needs, wants and preferences. Okay, so ultimately that value, when you're profiling your consumer, how people value things and the values that they have are built up out of all those different elements, from demographics right through to psychographics, motives, fears, dreams, all of those different elements. Now, Holbrook and his taxonomy of different consumer values dates back to 96 and 99, and it suggested that he had created an all-encompassing model that you could place every single consumer in, and it looked at how forms of value and how those forms of value meant that consumers would seek through their consumption and interactions with the marketplace. So he was suggesting that you could place consumers in this model and it would explain their consumption and the way they interact with the marketplace. Although it dates back to the mid-90s and is touching sort of 20 years old now, the model is still widely used in marketing circles as a really great way of understanding consumer value and placing consumers in specific boxes. So they go through 8 forms of consumer value, and we're going to go through those today. The interesting thing to point out is, and you should reflect this in your group showcases, is that while consumers can sometimes pursue only one type of value, in most cases consumers are seeking a combination of different types of value. So don't worry if you can't place your consumer in one particular box. That is actually quite natural because consumers tend to actually combine different types of value, and it is those combinations that will affect how they interact with the marketplace and how they consume and their consumer behaviour. So here is Holbrook's model, which he calls a typology of customer value. As you can see, it's broken down into different elements. So at the top you will see 2 words, extrinsic and intrinsic, and then self-orientated and other-orientated. These 4 types of value are the overall approaches to customer value that customers may potentially take, and within those, or formed by a combination of those 4 elements, is 8 different typologies of customer value. So for example, if we look at the customer value typology of play, which is all about fun, we will notice that this is a combination of self-orientated and intrinsic consumer behaviours. Okay, so I don't expect you to understand this model at this point, so we're going to actually break it down now into understanding these different 8 elements and what they stand for and what customers may feel when they fit into one of these boxes. But first of all, it's important to look at the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic value. And the best way to do this or explain this really is by offering you some examples. So let's start by looking at extrinsic value. This fundamentally means that the customer views consumption as a means to an end. So a a customer might describe, I eat this meal in this restaurant because I am hungry. So it is purely a means to an end, and the end is satisfying their hunger. And so that's the extrinsic value that they get out of the meal, that they satisfy their hunger. Consumption is a means to an end. The other thing to consider is the opposite of that, so intrinsic value, where consumption is an end in itself and experiences can be appreciated as an end in itself. So here, it's not necessarily about the concrete things that we get out of the consumption. It's actually more about the experience that we're concerned about. So for example, this might be a day that we spend at the spa in a luxury hotel. It's not the meal that we eat and it's not the meal that we eat in that spa day and the satisfying of our hunger. It's actually the whole experience of that spa day. So it's a much more all-encompassing, experience-focused type of value, based on much higher level needs than extrinsic value, which is often based on our much more biological needs like sleep, hunger, etc. Please feel free to ask your seminar tutors questions about this model. We'll have more chances to explain and work with these terms in the seminars. So please take this as your first exposure to the model. If it doesn't make sense right now, hopefully over the next few weeks it will make more sense. Right, so on the left-hand side of the model, there was also another two different orientations of consumers, one being self-orientated and the other other-orientated. So self-orientated value is when a consumer prizes some aspect of consumption selfishly and thinks, well, this consumption is all about me, okay? I'm consuming for my own sake. So an example of this is if you go on a spa trip, you might describe it as, I value my trip to this spa because it relaxes me. So here, if I'm self-orientated in my view on value, I'm actually selfishly thinking, well, what are the benefits to me? If I'm more other-orientated in my views on value, then I tend to be a consumer that would look at its positive impact on others. So, for example, if we look at the same spa day, I would be thinking, right, I'm here with a friend and isn't it lovely? I'm getting value out of this experience because I can see her having a great time because she's really been not very well for a long time, and here she is, she's having a good time, she's relaxing, and I'm getting value not because it's relaxing me, but because I'm enjoying seeing her have a good time. So that's the difference between self-orientated and other-orientated. Think about it as I'm thinking about myself for self-orientated. For other-orientated, I'm thinking about others. Probably one of the more simple aspects of Holbrook's model. Right, so he also considers this difference between active and reactive. Again, this is probably a bit more of a difficult concept to come to terms with. So let's try and explain it. So active value is where consumption involves physical or mental manipulation of a tangible product or service. So here, the consumer is creating value by actually doing something physical with the product. So, for example, within hospitality, there would be active value if you are actually eating food in a restaurant. So the food becomes a tangible product or service, and the active value is the act of interacting with that tangible product, which is the food. Reactive value is where consumption involves apprehending, appreciating, admiring, or otherwise responding to some object. So this is much more intangible, and it's instead of the consumer doing something to the product, as in the consumer eats the food in the restaurant, this is more about the reaction or the influence that the product and service has on the actual consumer. So, for example, if we think about the boutique hotel, it might be the decor and design and atmosphere of the hotel that has some sort of influence on the consumer. So the consumer is reacting to their environment, which is why we talk about it being reactive value. Right, so let's start on our journey through the 8 different types of consumer value then. Let's start with efficiency. Efficiency is all about really what it says on the tin. It's about the efficient use of consumer resources. It's about consumers who value saving time, money, effort, and they don't want to think too hard about things. So they want to lessen their cognitive effort. So let's have a look at these 2 pictures then. These are prime examples of different types of products and services that are appealing to consumers who value efficiency. The first one is your self-service check-in at a Premier Inn hotel on the left-hand side. So this is predominantly about saving time and effort, and also potentially cognitive effort as well. You know, that ability to, after a long day, you want to check into a hotel, you don't particularly want to have to engage with anybody, you can just go to the machine. Okay, the machine isn't going to ask you how hard your day's been or anything, or engage you in conversation. We can also look at it in a different way, efficiency that is around saving money. So here you can see an offer to get 40% off main courses at Pizza Express. So sometimes businesses are appealing to consumers who value efficiency, but those who actually want to save money. So again, that is an efficient use of consumer resources, saving money. Saving time on the left, money on the right. Second, we move to excellence. So this is the ability of a service or product to provide a quality experience. And remember that quality is just really all about being best in class. So it's not about saying that fine dining is better than McDonald's. It would be about saying McDonald's is the best in its class of fast food, okay, and the Savoy is best in class of hotels in London, for example. So here we have consumers that whatever market they're buying into, whatever product or service they're buying into, they value that it is considered to be best in class. How do we respond to this as hospitality and tourism providers? Well, we have to maintain our standards and maintain our quality experiences, and this is where certain quality measures come into place to help us do that. And an example of that may be Hospitality Assured. So they can actually monitor and accredit us against certain quality standards to make sure that we can actually target consumers who are looking for excellence, who value excellence. Right, what about status? This is the idea about being seen, see and be seen. Okay, so this is where consumers have a purpose, that their end result is going to achieve admiration or respect for others. So it's about choosing particular hospitality products and services and tourism that are going to elevate their status, and that people are actually going to go, wow, I really respect you for going there, you're obviously really doing well, you're earning a lot of money. So on the left hand side is the cocktail bar at the Shard in London. You know, very expensive to get a cocktail there, probably looking at sort of £12-15 for a drink. If you are seen there, that could elevate your status. It could show that you're willing to spend that, you're willing and able to spend that amount of money, and you value people seeing you there. On the right hand side is a boutique hotel in East London called the Zeta. Again, it's a very trendy place, so being seen there by other people could mean that you are trendy, cool, in with the right set. So this is really all about this idea of being seen in the right places and elevating your status. Right, esteem then. This is similar to status in terms of its effects, as in people will have a positive view of you, but where status is an active strategy, this is more of an inactive strategy. So it means that the status is gained without any real conscious action or motivation. So let's think about the example of Glastonbury, okay? If the consumer values esteem, they may go there purely to experience and listen to the music. But as a side product of that, as a byproduct of that, their friends also view them as cool, trendy, whatever the term wants to be in that given decade, about the fact that they've gone to Glastonbury and they've had that experience, and how amazing is that? So you've gone for one reason, but your friends as a side product actually have a more positive view of you. So that's esteem. Play. Okay, this is all about having fun, seeking enjoyment from your consumption. Okay, it's individually experienced, so you may think it's fun, others may not, and that's so play is a very personal thing. So some people, for them, a Club 1830 produces this value in vast quantities. Okay, they can have fun, they can get drunk, they can party, they can sleep on the beach all day, they can meet people. That is play for them. For other people, there would be no play value at all in going on a Club 1830 holiday. Okay. This idea that consumers value play has generated whole new restaurant concepts. So for example, on the right hand side you'll see the Rainforest Cafe. So you can look at the interior and you can see that that's based all around them realizing that consumers want fun, they want enjoyment from an experience. And they create that through the decor, the theme menus, the music, the animatronics, the whole experience. It's all catered around play, fun and enjoyment. Okay, aesthetics then. This is about appreciation of a consumption experience, and really aesthetics is all about anything that provides a multi-sensory experience that satisfies all of our five senses. So a really great example is maybe going to see a show such as Cirque du Soleil. You get it. The smells, the sounds, the sights, all sorts of different experiences. But again, hospitality and tourism can capitalise on customers who want this multi-sensory experience. We've just been talking, haven't we, about Rainforest Cafe, and in many ways that provides this multi-sensory experience. I think consumers who value aesthetics really want to be absorbed into the experience. They want authenticity of the experience. They want every single element to add into that experience. So for hospitality providers, if you're going to target these types of consumers, then you have to go the full way. So, for example, the Rainforest Cafe, it wouldn't be enough just to have the music. You would have to have the decor as well. You have to have the food fitting in. The menus have to be themed. So think about the theming of hotels, restaurants, holidays, etc., because often they are appealing to this type of consumer value in terms of aesthetics. Ethics then, this relates to the consumption experiences that allow consumers to express moral duty or obligations or derive personal satisfaction from behaving in that way. So this might be tourists who want to eat organic produce. It might be consumers who get value out of going on tourist-based holidays that actually put something back, so volunteering holidays, or holidays that consume you much more into the community and actually you give something back. So the ethical consumer is one that's quite easy to spot and easy to define. Spirituality then. This relates to sort of sacred consumers that value this spiritual experience, a transformation, a consumption experience that somehow provides you with spiritual experiences, bodily sensations of ecstasy. So, for example, we have two very different spiritual experiences. We have on the left here tourism that is based around trips to places like Lourdes and Mecca, where people are actually travelling back. They're going on a pilgrimage type experience, which is obviously spiritual and based around religion. And then on the right hand side, we have kind of the opposite of that. We have the rave type experience. You know, when it's kind of people will describe going to a rave as some sort of out-of-body experience, escape, and it becomes almost like a spiritual experience for people. So spirituality, just like play, can be massively different for different people. So, other models then. I mentioned at the beginning that there are a couple of other models of consumer value that you can look at. Smith and Colgate's model from 2007 and the VOWS framework. The links for these are available to you on Blackboard, so please read the information on these three models and compare them to Holbrook's model, and ultimately choose the one that you find easiest to work with for your assessments. But we'll be doing more work to clarify Holbrook's model in the seminars. Okay, I'm going to finish this lecture by leaving you with a little YouTube clip to think about. Maybe this will spark some ideas about how marketing managers sometimes get targeting their consumers completely wrong. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you.